are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Monday, November 15th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Yahoo Sports, and feels good to be back. 11 games on the docket for today. I wish it wasn't 11. I would prefer 9 and 5 instead of the 11 and 3 that we're about to get for the next 2 days, but I'll take what I can get. Before we do anything, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how was your weekend? How was your past couple of days? I know a couple of good things happened, maybe not so much yesterday.
Yeah, weekend was fine overall. Came out a little bit ahead. Really good Saturday night in college football. Really bad yesterday and I guess everything. I was telling you before the show, capped it off by making what I think ended up being a pretty good cash lineup for the Showdown football game and then forgetting to actually enter it on DraftKings. So that was disappointing when I went back and looked and saw that I had some dude that I've never heard of at captain. So that was, a nice capper to Sunday, but overall the weekend went pretty well.
Did that change your process moving forward to put in a lineup that is functional as a placeholder?
No, I mean, it's not the first time I've done it and it doesn't change anything. Normally
I know the same feeling. I don't know why we don't do it so obvious. Like it's so obvious and so easy to do. And I do the same thing more often than not.
Like normally I switch to what I think is going to be at least close to my cash lineup, like as soon as I can, once I start my lineup building process. But like early in the day, I normally just click names. I don't know. I think it's just it takes enough time to enter every slate of every sport. I don't want to start trying to hand build lineups while I do it. I just want to get it over with.
I think that's the play though. Just trying to hand build it as best as you can with guys that are functional. Because I normally do flip the salary. I spend $25K out of my salary cap. I have 7 guys that I've never heard of before. And it's really easy to just build one by hand that is close enough.
Yeah,
a non-death sentence lineup is, I guess, the best way to put it.
Yeah, so my cash lineup for Showdown last night ended up being Jeff Bidet at captain with Blake Bell, M. Burton, Josh Gordon, Noah Gray, and Marcus Kemp. Probably could have put in a little bit better effort than that on the dummy lineup.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have taken a whole bit of effort. I think you could have got there if you needed to. That's long gone now. We are on to Monday. We have a ton of games to talk about. 11, in fact, as I mentioned in the leadoff. I'm back. I'm feeling energetic. I'm ready to play. The wife is in the office today, so I've got the house to myself. She's got dinner tonight with the work peeps. So I am fully focused on NBA DFS today, which means I assume I get my clock cleaned and all of the fun that I expected to have will just go by the wayside. Let's dive into this one, though. Quinn Williams in chat saying you got a Noah Gray TD yesterday. So
yeah, that lineup actually scored 10 points.
That's fantastic.
I didn't go back and look. I really hope there was someone else that I played head to head that did the same thing, but with a worse lineup. That would be great.
If you did win one head to head from somebody else that didn't do it, but you got that garbage touchdown, that's fantastic. Yeah, you named a bunch of people there that I was not familiar with in terms of football. I had no idea. When you were M. Barton, that was just very clearly don't know who that. Don't even know their first name.
No idea.
Mike, Mark, not a ton of choices. All right, let's get into it. You ready?
Yep.
Boston Celtics at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Boston 2.5-point favorites, 200 total, which is the lowest on the slate, and it's not particularly close. For Boston, we know still without Jaylen Brown. On the Cleveland side, still without all sorts of pieces, but let's detail them first before we talk. It looks like Al Horford and Josh Richardson are in for Boston today, but for Cleveland, we know no Colin Sexton. That's going to be pretty long-term. Lauri Markkanen still out. Kevin Love out. Lamar Stevens out. So we'll start on the Boston side. A lot of ownership coming in here right now, at least on the FanDuel perspective. Dennis Schroeder, 34% owned. Feels a tad high. 12 on DraftKings. Tatum is right around 10 to 15%. Robert Williams on FanDuel is at 17%. I'm starting to feel like we're assuming that Horford isn't playing for that, but I guess Horford's in the ownership as well. What do you want to do with Boston? Our ownership looks weird. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then I saw his ownership. I was surprised to see Time Lord be 17% owned on today at 6,500, but we'll talk about it.
People really want Time Lord to be a thing in DFS though.
I guess, but I thought 17's a lot on today.
What'd you say his price was on FanDuel?
65.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think he's fine, but Horford, like you were getting at, Horford makes a pretty big difference there.
Yeah.
In 9 games with Horford active this year, 30.2 minutes per game for Robert Williams. That's good, but 0.86 DraftKings points per minute, 14.5% rebounding percentage, 12.2% usage percentage. To compare that to the games that he's played without Horford, 3 games without Horford, 1.23 DraftKings points per minute, rebounding percentage is 5 points higher. He's also playing 8 more minutes per game. I think that probably was the result of overtime, but point being, more minutes, more stable minutes, and more rebounding when Horford's out. So Horford coming back makes it a lot less appealing to get to Williams, I think.
What else do you want to do with Boston here? Because Schroeder is the guy, 34% owned on FanDuel, also feels like way too high to me, but I understand why it's happening at 5,700. He's 6,500 on DraftKings, very different price tags.
Yeah, I think the DraftKings price tag looks pretty good on Schroeder. He's averaging 34 to 35 minutes per game as the starter this year. He's getting opportunities. It's not like he's sliding into the starting lineup and not doing anything. In 5 starts without Jaylen Brown, he has a 31% usage rate, 20.9% assist percentage, 36.5 minutes per game. One of those games, he played like 39 minutes. So I think going forward, you probably see 34 to 35. But the point being that he's playing a lot of minutes. He's averaging a DraftKings point per minute. The matchup isn't ideal. Again, like you said, this game has about a 200 total. They played Saturday to a 180 total. So not the most appealing game here, but the minutes do look good for Schroeder. Obviously, you can get to Jason Tatum whenever Jaylen Brown is out. He's a high upside guy, but it's an 11-game slate. There's going to be a lot of options that you can pay for. Guys like Marcus Smart, Josh Richardson, I think are reasonable as value plays. Smart hasn't been very productive this year, but he is playing 34 to 35 minutes. He's still cheap. You're going to just get him running into some big games. And then Richardson missed the last game, but he's probable today. In the 2 previous games, he played about 30 and 32 minutes. Someone else that doesn't produce at a very high rate, but he's 3,500 and likely to play around 30 minutes. So I wouldn't say that there's really anything I'm prioritizing from Boston, with the exception maybe of Dennis Schroeder on DraftKings. But even with the low total, I still think there's some favorable pricing, at least in terms of ceilings, even if not medium projections.
I'm really Schroeder won't be 34% on FanDuel by the time we get to lock, but he is going to be one of the more highly owned guys. And he is the guy that showed up the most for me on FanDuel. So I don't want it to seem like I don't like him. I think he's the most likely to be optimal of anybody on Boston, just given that price tag. But there's a lot of value out there today that we're going to get to. And I just don't know how necessary him being in a third of my lineups is going to be. Plus, this game is a tire fire. Ugh. Well, let's talk a little bit about this Cleveland team. Darius Garland, 16% owned on FanDuel. Ricky Rubio, 13% owned on DraftKings at 6K. Those are the 2 highest ownership numbers that we have so far. Mobley's getting a little love. I like him a little bit more on FanDuel than the public does. I probably feel the same way on DraftKings. Jared Allen's price tag is getting to a place where it gets a little scary. 7,500 on DraftKings, so a little bit better. He gets that power forward eligibility on FanDuel too. What do we do here with Cleveland in a pretty tough spot?
Yeah, pretty unappealing spot. But Sexton being out Sexton, Love, and Marketing being out does change things. Does make things look a little bit better here. Guys are starting to be priced for that. Garland at 6,800, I think is fine. To me, the biggest impact of Sexton being out on Garland is the playing time. It helps solidify those 35 to 36 minutes for him. I think that people sort of have been over projecting the impact it's going to have on him from a production standpoint, because if you look last year, he would see a nice bump in everything when Sexton was on the floor. But last year, you didn't have Ricky Rubio playing a bunch of those minutes alongside him. You didn't have Evan Mobley on this team. So I think that it's more of a neutral in terms of per minute production. He's at 0.97 DraftKings points per minute in the 3 games he's played without without Sexton. The usage rate's gone up a little bit to 25%, but I think overall the biggest impact is the playing time, which is nice. Rubio played 32 minutes last game. You can expect him to play 28 to 32 here. He's been a very good producer this year. I think he's fine. Not going out of my way to jam him into a ton of lineups now that the salaries come up, but I still think he looks okay. The front court with Mobley and Allen, I'm with you. I'm still interested in Mobley. He's playing huge minutes in most games. You had the game against Washington 2 games ago that he was in some foul trouble, followed it up with 39.7 minutes against Boston last time out. Jared Allen only played 28 minutes last game. That was, I don't really know why. He just kind of never came back in the fourth quarter until the very end. From the best I can tell, it's just that the Cavs went on a 15-2 run right around the time that Allen would normally check back into the game. So you had Chetty play the entire fourth quarter. You had that second unit just kind of stay out a little bit longer than usual. My assumption is that he's going to go back to playing mid-30s in minutes here. He has played a lot of minutes in the games that Love and Markkanen have been out. He's produced at a really high rate. So I do like getting back to him. The salary didn't move. 7,500 still looks very good, I think, for Jared Allen.
Yeah, I mean, for Allen, for this Cleveland team, it doesn't make any sense for him to ever be in situations where he doesn't close unless they're just on a heater. He's very clearly one of their best players. They're not getting better by playing like Isaac Okoro or Chetty more minutes. Like, his path back to the floor has to just be, oh, they're on a run. You know, you can come in at the next stoppage or something. But Jared Allen is going to be closing these games.
Right. And so he's played 6 games now without Love or Markkanen. And even including this last game where he only played 28.2 minutes, he is still averaging 34.7 minutes per game, 1.11 DraftKings points per minute. He has a 20% rebounding percentage, 19% usage rate. Even the assist percentage is at 11%. I think Jared Allen looks fantastic again.
Yeah. 3% owned on DraftKings too. I think that's very, very appealing as a tournament pivot. Anything else here for Boston or Cleveland?
No, this is a weird game where I don't expect there to be a lot of points scored, but there's still like 9 guys that I'm interested in.
Yeah, it's not ideal. On to Sacramento and Detroit. So Sacramento, 4.5 point favorites, 212 total in Detroit. On the Sacramento side, everybody's healthy, which is good. And on the Detroit side, everybody is healthy except for Kelly Olynyk, who's going to be out for probably 2 months or so, MCL damage. So let's start on the Sacramento side. 16% ownership to De'Aaron Fox on FanDuel at 7,600. I'm just pretty used to that being normal at this point. No one else in this game in double digits of ownership. What do you actually like from Sacramento?
Keep an eye on the starting lineup. Metu started in place of Mo Harkless last game.
Yeah. He
ended up playing 24.5 minutes. Harkless played 7.5 off the bench. The Kings lost to Oklahoma City, so not necessarily going to replicate it, I guess, but for whatever it's worth, Metu had a 7. He had the highest plus minus on the team. So would assume that they're willing to go back to him for, 24, 25 minutes. He's a pretty good fantasy producer when he's on the floor. He's only 3,500. So if he is starting again, I think he looks like a really good value and that ownership will come up. If he's not starting, then I obviously not rostering him. I'm still not going to really be interested in Harkless. De'Aaron Fox is down to 8,200 on DraftKings. I think that he's getting to a price point where as long as he's not pulling much ownership, which right now he's only projected for 4%, I'm interested in getting to him in tournaments. For a while, you saw him getting a lot of ownership at the reduced price tag, and I didn't really agree with that because I thought that there were legitimate reasons for his salary falling, but he's still close to a 30% usage guy. He's still very capable of going out there and having a massive game, especially against a team like Detroit. So if we're finally at the point where people are saying like, okay, 8,200 on Fox isn't a glaring value. He hasn't been that great this year. I'm going to go somewhere else. Then I like getting there for a guy that is going to play 36 minutes and just, dominate touches.
I have Buddy Hield popping a little bit for me, mostly due to ownership being at 1% on FanDuel at 5,800. You get the shooting guard, small forward eligibility, same as DraftKings. I think he looks good across both sites if he's unowned. Just a tournament play, nothing crazy, but he is a guy that I'm getting to more than what our current ownership is showing by like a pretty decent multiple.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And also I'd throw Sean Holmes in there too. I mean, obviously we're going to have the conversation about centers that we have every single slate, but he's 6,800. He's averaging 1.1 give or take DraftKings points per minute this year. We got 32 minutes out of him last game, which was good to see just because we'd had a couple games in a row where for one reason or another, he didn't play a lot, but he's been legitimately good this year. So it seems like, the Kings would like him to be on the floor. We would like him to be on the floor. He's just always someone that I'm willing to get to at low ownership because of the ceiling he offers. Anything
else for Sacramento?
No, just a good spot for them.
Yeah. Pretty good spot for Detroit, at least per ownership. Isaiah Stewart, 30% owned on FanDuel at 5,100, 14% owned on DraftKings. We've got Cade Cunningham, 20 to 25% owned, depending on the site. We've got Sadiq Bey at 18% on FanDuel at 6,100. Jeremy Grant for 7,200 on DraftKings, right around 10%. So a lot of ownership coming in. What stands out most to you from Detroit? I assume it's Cade.
Yeah, Cunningham's salary just not moving. obviously he's been pretty horrible from a fantasy standpoint this year,
Yeah.
but as long as the salary is there and the opportunities are what they have been, it's really difficult for me to get away from him because you can count on him to play 30 plus minutes. We got 33 last time out. I had said before that game, I thought there was a pretty good chance that he would play the most minutes that he had played so far this season, because ever since they said that he wasn't going to be restricted anymore, he played like 31.8 minutes. Then he played 30 minutes in foul trouble. Then he played 30 minutes in foul trouble. This last game, they subbed him out a little early in the third quarter, but other than that, it was a more normal rotation. They made up for that by playing him the entire fourth. He ended up playing 33 minutes. So I think there's a pretty good chance going forward that you get more games of like 32 to 34 minutes from Cunningham than of less. And he still leads the team. Has a, where'd he go? Oh, I forgot that Wowie defaults to last year.
Last year. Yeah.
Would be really
might have to send a message to Matt like, yo, man, it's time to roll that over. What's your cutoff for this?
26.5% usage right now through 204 minutes played. 41.8% true shooting percentage kind of has to come up, but still, and I point this out a lot. 0.83 DraftKings points per minute isn't very good, but it's completely serviceable for someone playing 32 minutes at 5,500, and it's kind of the floor. It's really hard to think that goes down considering how poorly he has shot.
I don't think it's possible for it to go down. I think that's the literal, I think that's a literal floor. If Cade Cunningham is a 45% true shooting player, he'll go down as the biggest bust ever of someone that was able to play like fully on injury related, and he can't score. That's insane to me. The shot will start falling, and he's going to become like a 0.95 to a fantasy point per minute guy by the time the season ends.
Yeah, and the peripherals are reasonable as well. Like he's not dominating rebounds or assists, but he has a 9.8% rebounding percentage, which is fine for a guard. 17.8% assist percentage is fine. It's not like he's a completely scoring dependent player, which is reflected in the fact that he's still averaging 0.83 fantasy points per minute despite not being able to score.
What are your thoughts on the big ownership on Isaiah Stewart right now on FanDuel at 30%, 5,100, power forward eligible, I might add?
Yeah, power forward makes a big difference there. I think it makes sense. Okay. We saw 32 and a half minutes last game. I think the thing with Stewart all season has basically been there's like two paths to him not playing a lot of minutes. One is foul trouble. One is Kelly Olynyk closing. Kelly Olynyk isn't closing anymore. So now you're just down to, can Isaiah Stewart stay out of foul trouble? It's good to know that when the answer is yes, you're looking at 32 minutes because that's going to make him look like a really good value. There's still going to be plenty of games where he gets in foul trouble, and that's the downside. But, I think he's very clearly a good value based on Olynyk's absence.
What's your projection for minutes there? 30?
28 to 30. Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's a tricky spot for him because when he hits the goal minutes, like the goal is 32 or slightly more potentially for Stewart. When he hits that, like you probably need him at 5K. Things are probably going pretty well, but at the same time, he's just as capable of playing 24 and not being able to play those minutes. So we have a lot of stories like that for centers on a slate like today.
Yeah. Somebody in chat said something about Cade's role looking like it's more, playing off ball, which is fine, but he's still second on the team in potential assists behind Killian Hayes.
Yeah.
Yes, if he was just running point constantly, he would look better, but it's not like he's just standing in the corner and running off screens and shooting.
Yeah. His role is off the ball right now because they don't have a choice. They can't do it the opposite way because Killian Hayes is terrible offensively. Like Cade has the skill set to be able to play off the ball. So he just is going to do that. I don't think that's their long-term goal. Like having the ball in Cade's hands is going to be a priority moving forward, but they don't have that functional ability because no one's going to guard Killian Hayes.
Right.
I don't have anything else in this one. Do you? Do you want to touch on like Jeremy Grant or Sadiq Bey, anything like that?
They have reasonable ceilings. They don't project that well for me on DraftKings relative to their salary, but Grant is second on the team in usage rate. I think as we would expect, he's averaging about a fantasy point per minute, likely to give you 35 minutes or so. If this game's close, it's a good matchup. So I think Grant's fine in tournaments, but priority wise, it's Cunningham and Stewart for me.
Jeremy Grant is that one guy where I never feel like I'm around him on the day that I want to be. And every time that I do have him, he has 22 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, and nothing else. It's like, can you do anything else while you're out there? Where are the rest of your peripherals, man? All right.
Yeah, it's funny. He's just funny to me because like going into last year, he was viewed as like such a different player. Like he was always, oh, he's not going to shoot, but he'll get a ton of peripherals. And then now it's like, oh, he's a really high usage guy who's going to do nothing else.
Yeah, you flipped it on its head. I'm really curious to see where he ends up. He wanted to go to Detroit. I don't know what's going to happen when he actually wants to leave. He should, because they stink and they're not going to be any better anytime soon. But he would be a big, I think they could get a lot for him at a deadline to a contender.
He's the kind of guy that just is going to fit really well on a lot of different teams. Like regardless of what they need, he can do it.
100%. Jordan just said it in chat, and I agree. Hit that like button, everybody. 300 plus people, only 48 likes. There should be 100 on here no matter what. Schedule for the rest of the day, loaded. 11:30 a.m. So coming up after this one, NFL Strategy Show Recap Edition. That will be Adam breaking down yesterday's NFL slate. The Awesemo Betting Show is going to be at 1 p.m. The Awesemo Fantasy Football Show on our Fantasy Football channel is at 2. We've got the Yahoo NFL Show at 3. Then we kick off the NBA pre-show at 4:15, leading up to Adam coming back for the deeper dive at 4:45. I will then be back with Greg for Live Before Lock at 6. And we still have NFL Live Before Lock coming up at 7:15. Free content. NBA player rankings are free. NFL Showdown projections are free. Our NHL player rankings are free, and college basketball projections as well.
I was just, this is kind of not super relevant, but I was just curious because of the Cade Cunningham conversation. He leads the team in touches, basically tied with Jeremy Grant. Leads the team in time of possession, he's behind Corey Joseph and Saban Lee in average seconds per touch. So leads all the starters.
Saban Lee doesn't count.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, he's still, it kind of goes back to it would be better if he were just running point and, Killian Hayes wasn't there, but he's still, he's not like in a Klay Thompson role or something.
Right. Shit. That's not how you type that. New Orleans Pelicans at your Washington Wizards. Pels are 3-point dogs, 213 total. For the Pelicans, looks like we've got everybody. Zion still not able to make it off the couch, but everybody else appears to be ready to go. On the Wizards side, though, a little bit different. It's looking like no Bradley Beal, no Rui Hachimura, no Thomas Bryant, no Davis Bertans. So some places there go around, but Beal clearly the big piece. We're starting on the Pelicans side. Joval, 14% owned on FanDuel at 8,800, 12 on DraftKings at 9,100. I like him. I don't necessarily need to follow that ownership on a day like today, given how many center options are going to exist, especially with Ingram back. I don't really like anything here for New Orleans today.
That's pretty much where I'm at as well. Valanciunas looks the best to me, but you do have to keep in mind Ingram coming back has a negative impact on him. Not that it makes him, a bad player or means he doesn't have a ceiling, but he's played 7 games now with Ingram, 21.2% usage rate, 20.7% rebounding percentage, 12.2% assist percentage, 1.29 DraftKings points per minute. Those are all good. But in 7 games without him, 1.37 DraftKings points per minute. Usage rate is 25.5%, so 4 points higher. Rebounding percentage, 22.2%, so about a point higher. And assist percentage, 16.3%, so 4 points higher. So it just, he's going to produce better when Ingram is not out there. So Ingram coming back, it's kind of a situation where you still have a very high ceiling based on the minutes and the talent level for Joval, but he's priced for Ingram to be out essentially. So, I mean, I guess you could argue he's a little underpriced for Ingram to be out still, but it's the salary has clearly risen as a result of Ingram being out. So he's closer to a neutral play. And then you factor in the opportunity cost of the position as well. And then the same can kind of be said for the rest of the team. Devontae Graham, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they certainly still have ceilings. There's going to be games that they just go out there and score, but they are priced pretty correctly if Ingram is out, which makes them just look a little overpriced for Ingram to be in.
This team's just gross.
And Ingram only played 29 minutes last game, so I have a hard time thinking he's playing 37 tonight.
I gave him 34, and that didn't really change anything for me.
Yeah, so that's what I'm at too.
That's
also Washington is suddenly good at defense. So
let's talk about Washington because I think there's a lot here. Obviously, with no Beal, we see some major changes to Spencer Dinwiddie's usage rate, and his price is not all that high on FanDuel. 6,500, 7,200 on DraftKings. Either way, he's 35% owned on FanDuel and 21% owned on DK. Kuzma, double digits across both sites. Aaron Holiday, value play du jour, started for Bradley Beal the last time out. He's 3,500, projected for 25% ownership at this moment. Gafford's around 10% ownership. Montrezl Harrell is viable a little bit on DK at around 10% ownership. What do you like most for this Washington team today?
I mean, Dinwiddie clearly stands out. He's played 2 games now without Beal, and he has looked really, really good. 33.4% usage percentage, 41.1% assist percentage, 1.6 DraftKings points per minute over those 2 games. Not saying that, I expect that level of production to continue, but he is just dominating this offense. Like, he's doing what you would expect him to do if he's healthy, and he appears to be healthy. So he still looks very, very good. The Pels are not a particularly good team either. Price tag is certainly reasonable at 7,200. What I think is really interesting is that value piece. You mentioned you had Aaron Holiday start the last game. He played 34 minutes. He is projected for 24% ownership right now. Raul Neto is $3,300 on DraftKings. He is $200 less expensive than Aaron Holiday. He is projected for 1% ownership. Holiday played pretty well last game. I think there's a lot of iterations of these games where Raul Neto really cuts into those minutes. Neto only played 16 minutes last game. You were seeing games even with Beal healthy where Neto was playing 22 minutes recently. It would not be surprising at all for Raul Neto to play like 8 minutes more tonight than he did last time at the expense of Holiday. I'm not saying not to play Holiday. I'm not saying he's a bad player or anything. He projects as a good point per dollar value as long as he starts. I am saying that I think using Neto as a contrarian piece in some tournament lineups instead of Holiday makes a ton of sense.
You projecting Holiday if he starts for like 30, 32, something like that?
28 to 30, and I'll give the rest to Neto.
Okay. Yeah, I have Neto in at 19 right now.
Yeah, I'll probably go
32.
Like I'll probably go like 28 Holiday, 22 Neto or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. That's fair. Yeah, you're not going to get Neto otherwise, so on a day like today, there's a lot of sub 4K guys, which is going to make DraftKings a little bit tricky. You almost need to set yourself up in this sort of way.
Like, I mean, so, and here's the thing with Neto, like he's averaging 21.3 minutes per game this season. I'm not going to project him for less now that Bradley Beal's out.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. I'm not trying to argue the opposite.
No, I know. I'm just kind of trying to explain my thinking is because what happens a lot is people, I think, adjust too quickly in a situation like this from like what their prior beliefs were. Like going into last game, Neto was considered to be an excellent value play. Then you see that one game play out where Holiday dominates minutes and Neto plays 16. And I think there's going to be a tendency for people to just say, oh, Aaron Holiday's the guy, like Neto isn't going to benefit and like overcorrect a little bit, where I think it's still just a really fluid situation, kind of like the McGee Frank Kaminsky thing where it's, we've been saying, and it finally came through yesterday, McGee scored like 50 DraftKings points, but we've been saying, that just because we had a few games play out where like McGee got in foul trouble, it doesn't mean that every single game is going to be 28 minutes for Kaminsky. I think it's the same kind of thing here where you don't want to take one game where Holiday dominated the minutes and suddenly you're like projecting Neto to play less than he has even with Beal in.
I'm with you. It's an interesting spot, and I like getting to Neto. Generally speaking, 3,300 on DraftKings is a really nice price that he can provide some value on. It's not like they're going to be super married to Aaron Holiday. They got him for like a second round pick swap for all intents and purposes. So, like, they don't have a giant investment in him. They don't care who it's going to be. We talked about Dinwiddie, Holiday. Kuzma is just, I don't want to say just a guy, but like very clearly a guy you want to try to get to when Bradley Beal's not in.
Yeah, it should be, more usage for him. He's rebounding at a high level this year as well, which is good. Oops, wrong search. In the 2 games without Beal, he has a 24.8% usage rate. He's averaged 1.18 DraftKings points per minute. You're likely to get mid 30s in minutes from him. So, I think amongst guys in that price range, like Dinwiddie is ahead of Kuzma for me, but Kuzma also looks like a solid option.
Anything else here?
Never mind. Harrell had been dealing with like migraines or something, but he's fine. Gafford at 4,300 is sort of interesting, but there's the whole center thing.
Yep. Orlando at Atlanta.
26 minutes last game.
He did. He's got 8% ownership right now at 4,300. I think we're just going to see a lot of guys that look just like that today.
Yeah, so I think that's fine, but it's not a spot where I would expect to be getting a ton.
All righty. Orlando and Atlanta. Orlando, 10-point dogs in Atlanta, 213 total. For Orlando, we've got a Q tag on Adams' boy, Jalen Suggs, but luckily for him, Suggs' minutes are down a little bit as of late, which is incredibly helpful for not playing him over and over again. Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, Michael Carter-Williams, all still out. Eton Moore out. On the Atlanta side, we know DeAndre Hunter now out with a torn ligament in his wrist, going to be out for a couple months, likely. Still no Okongwu. On the Orlando side, Wendell Carter Jr. is 16% owned. No one else is in double digits on either site. I don't really see anybody that I want to get to significantly. A couple little pieces here and there, but I'm not really all that interested in Orlando today.
Yeah, there's not a ton that stands out. Atlanta has been awful defensively this year. The only teams with a higher defensive rating so far are Memphis and the Pelicans, and they're middle of the pack in pace. So it's not a bad matchup, but the pricing is kind of tough. I think it's more so tournament spots for me, right? Like Cole Anthony at 7,400 certainly has the ability to just blow up a slate. Wendell Carter Jr., you're seeing the playing time come up when he's not in foul trouble. He's producing at a high level this year. He has power forward eligibility on DraftKings, which is really useful. So I think that he is a solid option in tournaments. Suggs, if he's in at 4K, I still think is fine. You mentioned the playing time being down, and I think that's a result of Orlando just basically adding Okiki and Gary Harris to the rotation. I still think that in games where Suggs, if it ever happens, if there's ever a game that Jalen Suggs is efficiently scoring the basketball, I think he probably, plays more minutes, but on average, pretty comfortable going with 26 minutes instead of 30 for him. And that does pull him down a bit, but 4K is still cheap. So if he's in, he would look, I think, fine. If he's out, I'm assuming you get more minutes for guys like Terrence Ross, RJ Hampton. So there's nothing that stands out as great for me, but I think Cole Anthony, Wendell Carter Jr., and then if he plays, Jalen Suggs are the spots I'd be getting to the most.
I'm with you. I have very little interest in most else. Mo Bamba's 7K on FanDuel and just center eligible. I can't even imagine putting that in. I don't know. Yeah, I'm good. Atlanta, on the other hand, tricky team, but lots of bodies to try to get to. Trae Young is 9,600 and 9,500 across FanDuel and DraftKings. Clint Capella, one of my favorite plays on the day on FanDuel, he's 6,400. That right there explains why, I just would greatly prefer to get the $6,400 Clint Capella, given the way that they're running the center rotation right now. John Collins is around 10% owned. Kevin Huerter is now playing a lot. He's got great eligibility, solid price tag, about 20% owned across FanDuel and DraftKings. And then we see Bogdanovich on FanDuel at 4,800, around 10% as well. What stands out most to you from Atlanta?
Yeah, so we don't have an injury report yet, but assuming that Kevin Huerter's starting, he's 3,800. You said, playing a lot of minutes. He played 33 minutes again yesterday. He's going to stand out, I think, as a really good value here, assuming he remains in the starting lineup. Capella,
here's the question for you: who do you like more, Kevin Huerter or Aaron Holiday?
Kevin Huerter.
Okay.
Capella, I'm with you. I think looks good. This is a big Orlando front court. I would assume this is one of the games that Capella is likely to play a lot of minutes. Played 32 minutes yesterday, so it's not like he did anything crazy on the front end of the back-to-back. I think you're probably getting 32 to 34, something like that here against Orlando. He hasn't produced at the same level this year that we've seen in the past. He's only at 1 fantasy point per minute, but with the salary dropping, you said, I think 6,400 on FanDuel. He's 7K on DraftKings. He's basically now starting to be priced for his production this year, which means that there's a lot of upside because from, in any given game, you can still see him sort of revert back to what he's been in the past and, have a higher usage rate in that one game or whatever. So I think there's a nice ceiling there. Same can be said for John Collins. I think it's going to be most difficult for me to get to Trae Young, which doesn't feel great because clearly Trae Young gives you a very high ceiling, but there's just going to be so many options in that price range on this slate. And also just really good options that are less expensive. Dinwiddie, for example, at $2,300 less expensive at point guard. So if I get to Trae Young, obviously I feel good about that. I like the matchup. He's averaging 1.33 DraftKings points per minute this year. It's just difficult to prioritize him over all of the other options available on this slate as well.
Yeah, this is a really good time for them to have Collins and Capella at the 4 and the 5 if you're going to be going up against Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter Jr. That fits perfect.
Yeah, and I will say that, so it doesn't make Collins bad because he is still 7,100. He's likely to play 33 or 34 minutes. He still looks fine. I prefer him in the games where they're likely to go small.
Yeah,
because he is much, much, much more productive at center than he is playing alongside Capella. So it's it doesn't make him overpriced. It just makes him like more correctly priced. Whereas if this were a game where I was expecting Collins to play a ton of minutes at center and Capella to only play like 26 minutes, I would really, really like John Collins.
Anything else here?
No.
Indiana Pacers at the New York Knicks. Pacers 3.5-point dogs, 216 total. Chris Duarte, questionable for the Pacers. That's pretty much all we need to know for Indiana. On the Knicks side, stop me if you've heard this before. Nerlens Noel is questionable. We already know how to deal with this. Let's start on the Indiana side. The highest owned guy in this game is Malcolm Brogdon at 9% ownership on DraftKings. Next highest number is Karis LeVert at 7%. Are you getting to anything from Indiana today?
Not really. LeVert being back, it's prices haven't really adjusted for all three of Sabonis, Brogdon, and LeVert being active, I don't think, because basically LeVert finally came back, then Brogdon was out for a couple of games, then LeVert went back out. So, you still have a ceiling in guys like Brogdon and LeVert. Brogdon's produced at a really high level this year, a lot of it at the expense of Sabonis. But again, most of that was without LeVert. So it's not like it would be shocking if any of Brogdon, LeVert, Turner have big games, but on an 11-game slate, there's a lot of plays that I really, really like before I start getting to these guys.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else I need to add. Indiana is right now a really good example of a team where on an 11-game slate, we're probably not going to say a lot about them. Sabonis and Brogdon and Turner and Duarte, if he's in and playing 30, they're never a problem when you see these guys that start and close and play all of these minutes. It's never a problem when you see one of these guys show up in a lineup, but right. I just can't add anything to talk about them. They're just not going to grade out as better plays than most of what you see.
Right. Their purpose in a lineup basically is to be a relatively low-owned guy that is capable of scoring 50-plus fantasy points. They're not likely to do it. And the reason that we kind of say that they're just like, they're like mediocre plays is there's going to be a lot of guys in their price ranges and or at their positions that are much more likely to succeed. So their role is basically in any one lineup, you need a low-owned piece. You have the money, you have $8,200 available. You say, yeah, okay, whatever, Brogdon fits. But you're not like going out of your way to put Brogdon in ahead of other guys.
Right. Yeah, I was going to use Sabonis as the example. You went Brogdon, but it's just like, yeah, if you never build a lineup and look at Sabonis's name and think like, oh my God, I got to like start this one from scratch. No, that's fine. There's nothing stopping that from winning. It's just not going to be as likely as other guys in that salary tier. So I feel bad when we like have to skip a team like this, but generally speaking, every single team's starters are probably in play and they can be in a lineup type discussion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you have this many games, especially the best plays in terms of like likelihood of success are going to come from teams that are missing key players because the pricing hasn't adjusted. Obviously sometimes there's just like complete mispricing, but outside of those cases, they're just going to come from teams that are not as healthy. And then also you're typically going to get, I wouldn't even say Indiana's overpriced today, which is actually kind of surprising. Normally when you have the situation like we've had with LeVert and Brogdon, normally for like a few games, they're just like completely unplayable. But that actually isn't the case, so I think that they're still fine. It's just that they're, like if Brogdon were out, LeVert would look great. If Brogdon, if LeVert were out, Brogdon would look better. But, as it is, they're kind of like the Bulls when Vooch is in.
Pretty much the same situation on the Knicks side. RJ Barrett is 15% owned on FanDuel. I don't think that's crazy. He's 5,600, good eligibility, plays a ton. Hasn't been good this year, but I understand why he's getting any ownership. Nobody else is in the double digits. Like, again, Randall is fine. Like, the minutes on this team has been a little weird as of late. It's been like bumping up a little bit more Alec Burks and a little bit less Evan Fournier, but I don't know if that's like a long-term decision or not. If Nerlens Noel is out, you just give those minutes to Taj. I don't think it really matters. The biggest piece to me, the most interesting piece, he's not getting owned. Mitchell Robinson is now 4K. I think he deserves that price tag, but like it feels really weird to see it.
It's one of those price tags where he's still somehow going to be mediocre a lot. Like he's going to 5 or 6x his salary, but it's not going to matter because you just used the center spot on 24 DraftKings points or whatever. But then like, once in a while he'll go get 40 because he blocks 6 shots and you like have to have him to win. So it's a weird price point. The opportunity cost is what makes it still not like a slam dunk to me. And then also the fact that Tibbs suddenly hates his starters. It's almost like playing them 40 minutes a game for 2 or 3 straight years, maybe wore them down a little bit, and now he doesn't like them. But they've been losing minutes to the second unit, which has been playing well. They got completely benched 2 games ago. They played fewer minutes last game. I don't think that's the norm going forward. I think that you start getting back to the starters playing a lot of minutes, but at the center position specifically, I think it's pretty likely that you're getting like a 26-22 split between Robinson and whoever the backup happens to be.
Yeah, I went 25-23. It doesn't make Mitchell Robinson look all that interesting. He came up in like 3% of sims, but it's just one of those things where I see that price tag and you just know he's hanging 40 soon enough. Like he'll just fall backwards into it. It won't even have to be like a high effort game. He doesn't have to go crazy. It's just going to be, he's going to block a shit ton of shots. That's all that it is. We just got a super chat from Kendall Young. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I crunched 20 lineups. Would it be crazy to set randomness to 100% to give me different exposure lineups? No, but you can do whatever you want. Be aware of like the projected scores that might come up. You might want to cull that list of 20 down a bit because you might have some lineups that project pretty low. But to me personally, randomness is like putting salt and pepper on your food. Like you can kind of do whatever you want to do to make your stuff best. It's different for everybody. What I do and what Adam does could be the same or different, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah, what I was going to say is basically the same thing you were saying. Like that's fine, and that's definitely an effective way to get a bunch of different players across your lineups. But you're going to also still want to pay attention to what you're doing. Like, like maybe if you're playing 20 lineups, use 100% randomness, but create like 100 lineups or something like that, and then sort them by projection. Go through, make sure you're not getting a ton of overlap. More overlap than you're comfortable with your players. But like, if you just take 20 lineups and you put it on 100% randomness and say like, all right, whatever the first 20 it generates are, you're probably gonna have some trash lineups in there, just most likely. So that is an effective way to do what you're trying to do. You just want to pay attention then to make sure that you're not playing bad lineups just for the sake of having different players.
Yeah. The best thing that you can do is to understand what setting it to 100% does to your player pool and the spread of your guys, and then trying it at 50 and understanding what happens when you change randomness. Not necessarily like, is this good or bad, but understanding what turning the dials in Fantasy Cruncher does is way more important than like just thinking about the type of contest you're in. It's a good question though. Nothing else for the Knicks, I'm assuming, right?
Right.
All right. We're on to the Denver Nuggets at the Dallas Mavericks. Nuggets are 4-point dogs, 209 total. We do have one big question mark here in that Will Barton is questionable. We know Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray are still out. Will Barton's status is going to be very important for this spot. I have him in for right now because I don't know what the hell else to do. And on Dallas, everybody is in except for Maxi Kleber. So we'll start on Denver. Nikola Jokic is 12% owned across FanDuel and DraftKings, which is incredible given the fact that he's 11.5 on FanDuel and 11.7 on DK, but we have enough value for it. I just don't know if I'm going to be there. And I say that as someone who loves Nikola Jokic and thinks he's the second best fantasy player in the world. I still don't know if I'm going to get there today.
I think he's actually the best right now.
It's just a coin flip. I got it at 1.60 and 1.59 for Jokic and Giannis. So
are you taking off Murray and Porter?
This is just his like rolling rates. Sure, you're talking about like matchup
I was saying like
dependent.
at the moment, he's the best. He's at 1.81 DraftKings points per minute in 562 minutes without Murray and Porter since last year.
Yeah. We're just talking about that in a different way. Yes, with no Murray and no Porter, I don't have a problem saying that it's Jokic. Just not the way that I'm looking at it for right now.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And he's up to 162 minutes without them this year, 2.05 DraftKings points per minute.
Yeah.
So
1.72 just in general on FanDuel.
Yeah, he's playing better this year than he played last year, which is absurd.
He's incredible.
And then, you take those guys out. But yeah, like I'm with you. He's not a necessity because it's an 11 game slate. He's really expensive and he's a center. But I think he's pretty clearly the top projected guy, like on any slate that he is on. Yeah. He's just putting up absurd numbers. He's playing 35 minutes in competitive games. He was disappointing last night. He only had 52 DraftKings points. I'm not positive, but I think he missed the triple double by like a rebound and an assist. So like even that was extremely close to just being another massive game.
He also played 28 minutes.
Yeah, that'll also do it. Oh yeah, Matt, like 20, 30 point win for the Nuggets. So yeah, 52 points in 28 minutes, just another two fantasy points per minute. He's great. And so the low ownership does make me want to get to him, just because I think you're kind of just starting your lineup with 65 DraftKings points or something, and going from there, not a bad spot to be at. But at the same time, you're going to be able to find, there's going to be mid-range centers that score 40 or 50 points today, most of the time.
Yeah, it's tricky. I like him. It's the positional flexibility is like the real key piece to this. It's just difficult when you're just center eligible. You don't have the same amount of places you could end up in a lineup as everybody else. That's all. If Will Barton's in, I don't want anybody else from Denver, though.
Yeah, what the hell happened with Will Barton yesterday? Like, I wasn't paying a ton of attention.
You know more than me by default.
I got an alert, like, Will Barton won't play today. I'm like, pretty sure that game's at halftime. And yeah, he was just didn't play. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. We don't have that injury report yet. I'm with you. If he's in, there's not a whole lot else that I want. I still think $4,400 Monte Morris is okay. I think $3,800 Jeff Green's okay. Bones Highland at $3,400 would be okay. But if Barton's in, all of those guys go down because Highland's minutes become a little bit less secure. There's less usage for Monte Morris. There's less, for Jeff Green. If Barton is out, Morris looks better. Bones Highland looks better. PJ Dozier looks better. And the team just becomes a lot more interesting.
Keep your eyes peeled for the deeper dive and live before lock for that kind of news. On the Dallas side, it was pretty easy. I think it's Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis and nobody else. Luka 10-6 on FanDuel, which I think is appealing. 11-3 on DK. I'm still not really getting there, though. Porzingis has been playing really well. I bet people think that he's not, but 1.19 FanDuel points per minute so far this season. 14% owned on FanDuel, 18 on DraftKings. The fact that he doesn't have center eligibility is one of the dumbest things I'll ever see on DK. Of all the guys not to have it, it's probably the guy that's 7 foot whatever, one of the tallest guys in the league. Definitely not a center.
To be fair, he doesn't play like he's 7 foot whatever.
No. Well, I mean, the first thing he wants to do when he's on offense is get a post touch. So I don't know how true that is either.
Yeah.
Luke and KP are the only people that I would roster from Dallas with any sort of like actual volume.
Jokic has a 100-point ceiling, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like anybody that can hang like a pretty sizable triple double, like there's nothing to stop him from going like 30, 20, 10. You just need a little bit of block steal luck.
Right. Yeah, and like obviously we're saying it not in the sense of like a 75th percentile outcome, but
no,
like an actual like, is he actually capable of getting 100 like once in a season? I think the answer is yes.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, he's gonna. Yeah. It's probably gonna have to be like a 38-minute game for him.
Right.
You can get to 2.5 and something like that in that neighborhood. Yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah. So as far as the Dallas side goes, though, I'm with you. Not a very appealing spot whatsoever. Luka is always fine, but it's just really difficult for me to want to get to him when I can pay a few $100s extra and get to Jokic, or there's plenty of other guys to get to as well. Porzingis at 7K, I think, is the most appealing piece to me here. Like you said, he's producing at a high level this year from a fantasy standpoint. He's getting more playing time. He played 34.4 minutes last game. He played 32 the game before that, so shouldn't have to worry about any sort of minutes restriction or anything like that. I think 7K for Porzingis looks good. He's the guy that I like the most on this team.
Same. By the way, Denver dead last in my pace metric, so maybe no, depending on who they're playing. Because they are the slowest team in the league. That matters more than probably any of it.
I think the biggest thing for Denver is probably that one, the biggest thing working against Jokic is that one, Denver plays really slow, and then two, they're really good. So in fast-paced games, there's a pretty good chance that they are just destroying whoever they're playing by the fourth quarter.
Also true. God, fun game though. I'll probably watch a little bit of this.
Yeah, this game is the only thing holding this back from a fantasy standpoint is it's going to be slow.
Yep. Yeah. Dallas, I have it 23rd in pace. Anyway, hit that like button. We're over the 100 mark, 500 people in here, but I think 150 or 200 is certainly doable. We got to talk a little bit about the presenting sponsor of this show, and that would be Yahoo Fantasy. We've got an offer for you where you can get 1 month free of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You just have to be new to Yahoo. If you sign up using the link in the description of this video, make a deposit and play. That's all you have to do. Yahoo will send us your username After you play in your first paid contest, we will then reach out to you with a coupon code so that you can sign up for a month at Awesemo. Jordan just let Nightbot drop it into chat. If you need immediate access, please email support@awesemo.com. You can also get a free $10 as well to enter any Yahoo contest. We've got DFS tools and projections designed specifically for Yahoo, so you'll have your best chance of winning big. It's a pretty good deal. Who doesn't like free stuff? Click that link in the description or from Nightbot in chat. Get hooked up with a little bit of Yahoo. On to the Houston Rockets, 11-point underdogs in Memphis, which is gross. Houston, everybody's healthy. Memphis, everybody's healthy. So this one's actually pretty easy to take a look at. Christian Wood, 21% owned on FanDuel at 7,600 with both eligibilities. He's 10 on DraftKings. I love Christian Wood, one of my favorite plays of the day, even at that ownership. 11% ownership for Kevin Porter on FanDuel, point guard, small forward. Another fan there. After that, it gets pretty bleak for Houston.
I think Christian Wood was like $9,000 yesterday on DraftKings. I could be wrong, but that seems like a really aggressive drop down to 8K. So, yeah, he looks good to me. He's playing big minutes as long as the game's competitive. This pretty good chance this game isn't, but if it is, yeah. you probably get a good game from Christian Wood. Kevin Porter, Jalen Green, Jayshawn Tate, like they're all playing pretty big minutes if the game's close, particularly Green and Porter. But this is another team where no individual guy really stands out to me, but yeah. I would expect that I have like a Houston guy in a lot of lineups, whether it's Wood, Porter, Green, Tate.
I assume you're in for the $7,600 Christian Wood on FanDuel with power forward center.
Yeah, that looks right.
Yeah. Christian Wood yesterday was 8,600 on DraftKings. He was 9K 2 games ago. 8K is his lowest price of the season, I believe.
And to be fair, I have thought that he was overpriced for most of the season. So like, it's not a situation where it's just like, oh my God, they messed up on Christian Wood. But I think he just looks a lot better today than he has in a while.
Okay. On the Memphis side, man, this rotation's gotten jerked all over the place. Now Brandon Clark appears to be back in it. Tillman is out of it. Conchard didn't play the last time out. We've got Desmond Bane, 15% owned on FanDuel at 4,300. Dylan Brooks, 18% owned on FanDuel at 5,800. Those prices aren't as good on DK. Like he's $700 more on DraftKings, so he's unowned on DK. We're getting Jaren Jackson up to 15% on DraftKings. We're getting Kyle Anderson up to 12 on DraftKings. So the plays here between FanDuel and DK are wildly different from ownership today. Ja seems to transcend it, but he's 10K across both sites. What in the world do we do with Memphis?
I'm a little concerned about Ja too, just because of Dylan Brooks being back in the starting lineup.
Same.
It shouldn't have a big impact, but Dylan Brooks probably is going to disagree and not give the ball or take more shots than he should. So I'm a little concerned there. For what it's worth, 2 games this year with Dylan Brooks active, 28.3% usage rate for John Morant. In the games without Dylan Brooks, he's at 32.8%. Don't know if that continues, but pretty reasonable to think that it does for, whatever reason. But that makes it tough, even though it's a good spot, even though I would really like to get to John Morant. I've been playing him at 10K. It's a little bit difficult to prioritize him. I think Brooks is a negative. The most favorable price tag to me on DraftKings is probably Jaren Jackson at 6K. The minutes are all over the place as usual, but if he can get 30 minutes here, he's going to look pretty good against Houston. Also, I guess worth noting that since Taylor Jenkins said that they were getting more comfortable with Jaren Jackson at the 5, Steven Adams has played like 28 and 36 minutes. So, coaches continue to lie. But there is, I think, a path to Jackson getting a little bit more minutes at center in this game.
The guy that I'm most interested to talk about here, and I just want to get your thoughts, but it needs to be relatively quick given where we're at. Desmond Bane's at 15% ownership on FanDuel. He's just shooting guard eligible in 4,300. I think Dylan Brooks hurts Desmond Bane the most. Bane's usage has been up dramatically so far this season, and I think people are playing Bane as if that's still existing from Brooks. Now that Brooks is back, if Ja has to give up a little bit, I can't imagine how much Desmond Bane has to give up.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's at 21.8% in the games with Brooks so far, which isn't a drop, but Brooks came off the bench. Oh, sorry, those are the games without Brooks. He's at 21.8% without Brooks. With Brooks this year, he's at 17.1%.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And keep in mind, Brooks came off the bench for one of those two games. I think Brooks is going to take some volume from Morant. I think Bane is going to go back to someone that is still talented and probably playing, 28 to 30 minutes, but a pretty clear fourth option behind Morant, Jackson, and Brooks.
And not guaranteed to be playing monster minutes.
Right. A lot more competition just based on how the game is going. Like he played 31.4 last game. I think it's likely that he continues to be in that range on average, but now he's competing with DeAnthony Melton for minutes. Kyle Anderson, at times could steal minutes. So there's just a lot more. There's a lower floor on his minutes as well.
Anything else here?
No.
Phoenix and Minnesota. Suns are 4-point favorites in Minnesota, 221 total. One of the highest totals on the slate. Actually, might be the second highest or highest for the day. It's a weird one. We don't know the status on DeAndre Ayton as of right now. I'm just assuming that he's not in until he is back in. He's been out long enough that I don't want to try to guess it. I don't know if you're going the opposite direction. We've got Kaminsky up to 5,700 and 5,600 on DraftKings, so we don't have to get too worried about that at this point. He's priced to a point where, you don't have to worry too much about that minute split. JaVale at 4,400 and 4,200 is you do.
You would think, but he was 21% owned yesterday on DraftKings.
How many games?
5.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean he was going to be popular today. I just meant I kind of thought that yesterday. And then a quarter of the field was just like, oh no, we want to play Kaminsky.
Yeah. If he's 4,600, then you have a real problem about making sure you think you get those minutes correctly. At 5,600, he just has to hit that to even be functional. JaVale, I think, is a little bit easier to get to, particularly on FanDuel, given the price tag and the lack of ownership. I think Booker looks okay and Bridges looks okay. I don't love Phoenix just in general, though.
Yeah, I like the spot. I just don't really like the pricing too much. McGee stands out to me. We've talked a lot about this, but assuming Ayton doesn't play, it's been you've gotten games where McGee gets in foul trouble and Kaminsky plays 28 plus minutes. But based on the way the rotations have looked, you kind of have to assume that if the Suns have their way, it's like a 24-24 split or something like that. So then even accounting for the foul trouble, you're still going 22 minutes on McGee, 26, 27 on Kaminsky. If McGee plays low 20s in minutes, he's still going to look pretty good at 4,200. The opportunity cost of the position is the biggest issue, but I still think he looks good. The rest of it, Paul and Booker obviously have high ceilings. They kind of fall into that Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis type range where I'm obviously never going to be upset about getting Devin Booker or Chris Paul against Minnesota, but they're also just not really standing out.
Devin Booker, Chris Paul, guys on the Pacers, the Jazz. There are guys that are the same thing every single day.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to mention here. On the Minnesota side,
they need McGee for Towns. He's just going to torch whoever it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And Towns being a phenomenal 3-point shooter, probably not the idea. JaVale doesn't want to follow him out to 25 feet either, or somebody's going to get a dunk.
He's going to kill Kaminsky, and he's just going to pull McGee out of the paint.
Yeah. On the Minnesota side, we've got Anthony Edwards, 12% owned on DraftKings. Russell, 12% owned on DraftKings. Russell not pulling as much ownership on FanDuel, just 7.5%. I have him ranked pretty highly now that his minutes appear to be creeping up a little bit more, and I just think it's a good spot in general for him. I like D'Angelo Russell more than I ever liked D'Angelo Russell across FanDuel and DK, and I like Anthony Edwards quite a bit on DraftKings at 7,900. What do you see most from Minnesota?
Yeah, I really like Russell at this price tag. He's, he was playing 29, 30 minutes a game prior to his injury. Now he's playing 34, 35 minutes in regulation. Last game, he played 30 minutes, but he lost the final 5 minutes and 22 seconds to garbage time against the Clippers. So 7,100 still looks like a good price tag on Russell. I think you get a high ceiling from Anthony Edwards for sure. His salary's come down a little bit. He's still about a 31% usage guy in the games that Russell has played this year. He's playing huge minutes. So I think he's fine. And then I like Towns at 10 too. You do have, you run into the same issues that we talked about with Jokic, where paying up at center just is naturally risky because there's going to be mid-range centers that smash and sort of make the pay up guys useless to some extent. But I don't really, I don't think Phoenix really has an answer for Towns here. We kind of just talked about it. There's nothing that they can really do to slow him down. The only thing, he hasn't been great this year. He's averaging like 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, but you're getting a difference in price now between him and Jokic also. So there's going to be times where it's just like, oh, well, I can afford to pay up, but I can't quite get to Jokic. In those spots, I think Towns looks pretty good.
Normally, I wouldn't care about this, but I do find it interesting for this spot. Today is apparently Karl Anthony Towns' birthday.
Cool.
Doesn't change anything that I'm doing, but like I wouldn't be mad about having more Towns on a day like today where I think he's just in a natural spot. He's the type of guy that I think gets up for a matchup where he's just like, oh, I get Frank Kaminsky today. Like it's sort of like the Jimmy Butler thought process when he gets to Minnesota. I think Towns might be a little soft, and this is the type of spot where he's just like, okay, I can be me on my birthday. I don't know. It's not changing anything for me. I still like him one way or the other, but interesting narrative for today.
Oh, I forgot Pat Bev too.
Yeah, so he's interesting because if people are just watching game logs and see that he played 23 and 23 over the past 2 games, they're not going to project him for a lot of minutes. He should probably still be getting 28 to 30 pretty easily. 2 blowouts back to back, closed the game before that for 35 minutes. I mean, he's Pat Bev, so it's, a 0.9 guy at 4,700 on FanDuel, but 4,100 on DraftKings. I like that.
Yeah, so do I. And I'm with you. I think 28 to 30 minutes. He's still getting assist opportunities, even with, starting alongside Russell. And yeah, the minutes I think look pretty good.
All righty. On to Miami and Oklahoma City. The Heat are 9.5 point favorites in OKC, 210 total. This one's a little tricky, but we've got a Q tag on Jimmy Butler. Still no Markieff Morris. On the OKC side, Derek Favors may sit for rest. I don't know if that even matters at this point any longer. Who the hell knows? We'll start on the Miami side. I have Jimmy Butler out. It just feels like a scenario where they don't need to bring him back. I wish it were somebody else because Jimmy Butler is the crazy type of person that would want to play here just because. I don't see the incentive for them playing him against Oklahoma City. They're off tomorrow. They play the Pelicans on Wednesday. So I'm moving forward with the assumption that Jimmy Butler is not playing, at which point I love Tyler Hero on FanDuel and DK. And I really love Bam at 8,400 on FanDuel, 8,100 on DK. He's got the power forward eligibility on FanDuel as well. Lowry's price is finally up. Still like him. I'm not really going to anything else, but Lowry, Hero, and Bam, if Butler are out, I want a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have Butler in for right now, but I agree with your logic. It's just I typically, when guys have only been out a game or two and are questionable, I typically just assume they're going to play. But I do agree with what you're saying. Even if he's in, I think Bam looks really good at 8,100. If he's out, Bam looks fantastic at 8,100. It would make Lowry look better. It would make Tyler Hero look better. But either way, I think Bam's a good play regardless. I think Hero, even at 6,600 on DraftKings, has some tournament upside. Like, you're still getting 32 minutes against a pretty bad Oklahoma City team. But clearly, if Butler is out, you can add a few minutes to that and he starts to look even better.
Yeah, I'm gonna be getting a lot of Miami guys here. But I mean, I want Bam one way or the other. 8,400 with both eligibilities.
Bam looks like one of the better center plays to me, regardless of Butler's status. It's just like, is he the number 3 play or the number 1 play?
Right. It's nice to see Kyle Lowry's price up to 7,400 on FanDuel, where it should have been. I would have liked to get a little bit more out of the $5,800 Kyle Lowry, but
maybe you should.
I get it now. Yeah, that's true. That's true. All righty. Well, I don't have anything else to add here for the Miami side. Gets really fun when I type in OKC. You can pay 7,900 for Shea on FanDuel. I think that's a good price. He's 8,600 on DK. Josh Giddey is 16% owned on FanDuel at 5,700. I mean, I get it. I don't really want it. I'd rather just avoid all of Oklahoma City. This is a really difficult team to want to roster right now.
Yeah, I have nothing. I mean, the only thing I guess I could point to, obviously Gilgeous-Alexander gives you a high ceiling and his price tag's reasonable, but it's a brutal matchup against Miami. You had mentioned Derek Favors maybe resting. I don't think it matters a ton, but you have seen a little bit more playing time for Jeremiah Robinson Earl lately. But even that, I mean, he's not a great fantasy producer. There's plenty of value on this slate. I have nothing. Yeah, it's gross. They play a ton of dudes. Half of them are barely NBA players. Yeah. Now they're playing Miami. Right. There are bad teams that can still look really appealing in DFS, Houston being one of them. But Oklahoma City, it's like they have one guy that they play a lot of minutes in Gilgeous-Alexander. He's expensive. And then they just run this really annoying rotation where everybody plays, Baisley gets a little bit more run. So does Dort. Giddey doesn't play as much as he probably should. And he's priced up from the time Dort was out and he was playing 34 minutes a night. It's just gross. And then you factor in Miami.
Kevin Buchanan with the super chat said, watch you guys a lot. Came in second in the early slate yesterday. Appreciate it. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. It's good to see. Thank you for the super chat. Glad you're watching. Glad you're winning. It's always good. Move on to two games left. We got enough time to get through this. Toronto at Portland. Raptors 1.5 point dogs, 212 total. This is a battle of two teams with guards that we don't know are going to play or not. Fred VanVleet is questionable. We also have a Q tag on Chris Boucher and Precious Achiuwa. That makes hashing out Toronto incredibly difficult right now. On the Portland side, Q tag on Damian Lillard, did miss the last one with that same sort of abdominal issue that he had during the Olympics. I put everybody in for Toronto to start, at which point I don't know what I want to do. I think Scotty Barnes and Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby and Trent and all look okay because they're going to play 36 to 40 minutes in a competitive game. Siakam's price is high enough right now that he's fine, but probably priced appropriately for just working his way back from injury. I don't know how you play anybody from the bench, but if we lose two of these guys, things really open up for Toronto.
Yeah, if everybody's in, I don't really see anything here. VanVleet, Siakam, Anunoby, Barnes, certainly in that like Indiana bucket where they're fine. But Siakam coming back and playing, full minutes at this point is likely to take enough away from Anunoby and Barnes that they're a little bit overpriced since they played so much this season without Siakam. I don't think he's going to have a huge negative impact on VanVleet because we didn't really see VanVleet's usage rate increase this year. You saw a bunch of that usage go to Anunoby and to some extent Barnes. So I think you see that kind of go back to Siakam now that he's back. But I think VanVleet, still lives around where he's been at this year. He's still playing huge minutes, so he's fine, but still difficult to prioritize. The team obviously becomes a lot more interesting if guys are out. We got 28 minutes last game from Goran Dragic in the starting lineup. If VanVleet is out and you get another start for Dragic, he's 4,100. He'd look okay. It would open up minutes for Banton at 3,100, who played 19 minutes off the bench. So, that would look a little bit better. But as is right now, assuming these guys are in, I have basically nothing here.
If everybody's in, I actually think that Chris Boucher might leave the rotation.
I was reading chat. What'd you say?
I think that Boucher might end up leaving the rotation. I just don't think it's going to matter as a discussion point.
If everybody's
VanVleet, VanVleet, Anunoby, Barnes, Trent, we know they're getting monster minutes. Siakam's on pace to start playing his 34 to 36. If Precious is going to be the center and they're just going to chop up minutes for, I assume Kem Birch is still going to get minutes ahead of Chris Boucher, at which point you give backup minutes to Banton, backup minutes to Speed, and then you're just done. You don't have any more bodies or minutes left. Yeah,
Boucher hasn't really been in the rotation this year, except for when Achiuwa or Birch are out.
Well, he's played literally every single game, but
he steps on the floor.
It's like 8 minutes.
Runs down the floor and goes back to the bench.
Yeah, I think he might just be done.
I think that's
if and when everybody's back. Weird, just weird. All right, we'll go to the Portland side. Obviously, I'm projecting Dame to be in for right now. He's only missed one game. He's 8,200 on FanDuel, and I'm jamming him into my lineups as per usual. He's not going to continue to shoot 29% from three. But after that, I think CJ looks okay at 7,700 across both sites. We've got Simons projected pretty heavily, which means that we don't have Damian Lillard. Well, I guess we have him in, but not in. I don't really understand how that works. What do you want to do with the Blazers?
If Dame is in, I don't see a whole lot. 3,500 for Simons is still okay. He's playing 22 to 23 minutes, even with Dame. But, again, you have so many other spots to go to. I'd be, going Aaron Holiday / Howell Neto, and assuming one of them beats Anthony Simons a pretty high percentage of the time before I get to Simons, just, out of guards in that price range. If Lillard is out, obviously bump Simons, bump McCollum. They both look fantastic. But assuming Lillard's in, this is another team that I don't really have much of anything.
Yeah. I assume you're on the same page as me though for Dame on FanDuel.
Yeah.
It's just at
He's
some point in
less
time,
expensive again on DraftKings, but still not that inexpensive.
Yeah. At some point in time, 8,200 will be comical as we move on in the season, or Dame's just out for the rest of the year.
Right.
All right, let's close this one out. Chicago and the Lakers. The Bulls are 1 point dogs, 219 total. This one's a weird one for Chicago, but we can talk through. No Vooch. We know he's still out for a couple more games. Obviously, Patrick Williams out. Kobe White, probable, making his return. For the Lakers now, no LeBron, clearly. No Trevor Ariza, no Nunn, no Reeves. We had Talen Horton-Tucker step into the starting lineup with Carmelo Anthony the last time out. DeAndre Jordan has not been playing. On the Chicago side, it's so much ownership, and I think it's all mostly deserved. DeRozan, 20% owned. Zach LaVine, 10 to 15%. Lonzo is 34% owned on FanDuel. He was my number one contender today. Alex Caruso is 30% owned across both sites. Tony Bradley's getting some love. You just got to play a lot of Chicago today, right?
Yeah, I think so. You got 38 minutes from Caruso last game, sliding into the starting lineup. Not saying he plays 38 again tonight, but if he starts, he was already playing 28 to 30 minutes in most games off the bench. If he starts, I think you can give him some more minutes. Tony Bradley is kind of an interesting one because we got, I think, 13 minutes in that first game. That was a spot against Golden State where I wasn't entirely sure why everyone thought he was going to play a ton of minutes. Then yesterday he played 24 against the Clippers, a bigger front court. Now you get the Lakers, which is like kind of in between. Are they going to want Tony Bradley out there with Anthony Davis or not? I don't really know exactly how they're going to play that one. I assume I projected around like 22 minutes or so. It's just like kind of a middle ground that I don't know what they're going to do. But I think, it's a reasonable value point per dollar wise, but still a lot of opportunity cost. That's going to keep him from being a huge priority. You also are getting Kobe White back supposedly. So yeah. I think LaVine, DeRozan, Lonzo, Caruso all look fine. I do think that White coming back makes it so Caruso probably gets back to his like 32, 33 minutes as opposed to 38.
Yeah, I gave him 32. Troy Brown's certainly not going to play today, I would imagine, if Kobe White is making his way back. I think that Dosunmu probably starts to lose minutes if Kobe White is coming back as well, probably significantly. It's a second round draft pick. Like, they don't have to have, like, they're just more interested in keeping Kobe White's value than Dosunmu's. It's just a lot to like for Chicago. Let's close it out with the Lakers. This one's really easy. Russell Westbrook's 9,700 on FanDuel. I think that looks great. He's 10-8 on DraftKings. A little bit tougher of a sell. I think AD looks good across both sites, 10-7 and 10-4, just fills up the stat sheet. But the most popular play here today is going to be Talen Horton-Tucker. Shooting guard, small forward, eligible on DraftKings, started the last game. If he's starting again today, he is the flat 3K. No way around it on that one, right?
I don't think so, because it's not even like he's a bad producer or anything.
Right.
Like, he's played, since last year, he's played 232 minutes alongside Anthony Davis. That's kind of the best, like, way that I can look at it. Westbrook sort of becomes like a proxy for LeBron James at that point. But really just trying to like capture what it looks like when Horton-Tucker plays as like the clear third offensive piece. He still averaged 0.82 DraftKings points per minute. He still has an 18.6% assist percentage and a 20.8% usage rate. So at 3K with multi-position eligibility, I don't really know how to get away from that. I want to see how many minutes he's played with both of Davis and James. He's
can't be a lot.
Played, only 43, still 0.85 DraftKings points per minute, but that seems fluky because the usage rate's 15%. But what about, so just alongside LeBron since last year, he's played 404 minutes, 0.79 DraftKings points per minute. The point here, I think, is we can expect around 0.8 fantasy points per minute from a 3K Horton-Tucker who played 27 minutes yesterday.
Anything else here? I don't think we really have it.
I don't think so. Wayne Ellington got up to 30 minutes yesterday, but
yeah, he actually didn't start, which is really hard to do.
Yeah, he closed over Bradley.
Anything else here?
No.
Deep dive later today. Deeper dive 4:45.
Yeah, football show now. Deep dive after that. Deeper dive after that.
There it is, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Please hit that like button on your way out the door. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. We've got a ton of content for the rest of the day, leading you all the way up until lock. Good luck. We will be back again tomorrow morning doing it all again.